Having that extra scale on the bottom, the 37-inch scale, just changes everything. So initially Periphery hired me to help co-produce their second full-length album, Periphery 2. And just prior to the studio session for that, they had lost their previous bassist, Tom. And they weren't really sure where they wanted to go with finding a replacement, because it's very important in the band not just to have someone that can play the songs, but someone that they have a good chemistry with and someone they get on with and has a similar ethos. So they were kind of taking their time. They knew they had a whole next record cycle to find someone. And I was playing full-time in a band on guitar in England here called Red Seas Fire. At that point, I'd filled in with Periphery a few times on guitar, actually. But with the band being the size it was, it didn't necessarily make too much sense for me to be flying out for shows all the time. And so I guess right after the second album that the band had picked up enough pace to where it wasn't an entirely dumb idea to hire someone from England. And I ended up playing all the bass on that record just through default, because the guitarists were tired after tracking their guitars and we needed to get songs done, and I'd just learn it part by part, literally bar by bar, or sometimes note by note, because it would be my first time hearing some of these songs. And just that whole process really brought us together. And after that, it was pretty much a no-brainer decision when they asked me to join full-time. But that whole process also really opened my eyes to the world of bass. When I first started out, actually before I started playing bass in Periphery, one of the bassists that really stuck out to me was James Leach from a band called Sick here in London. And I was hugely influenced by every aspect of that band, actually. It was one of my ways into the kind of progressive metal sound was through that band. And even though I wasn't very familiar with what bassists did, I could immediately hear that there was something very cool going on there. He seemed to have a very good knack at knowing when to support the guitars and when to go off and do his own thing and really complement it with interesting stuff, using complicated techniques like tapping and slapping. Yet he'd do it in such a way that it never felt like he was overplaying. And that was definitely one huge influence for me. And then, of course, you've got bands like Meshuggah, where the bass is just this gigantic grinding sounding instrument. I think they describe it as an oil tanker being dragged across a cobblestone street or something. I think that was their terminology for the bass tone in that band, and that's such a huge part of their sound, so that was a huge influence as well. Well, once I knew I was going to play in Periphery, the first company that I thought of was Dingwall. And just because they have this incredible mentality towards really kind of just trailblazing, coming out with all sorts of technologies and designs which I think not only look great but are very functional. He's been doing it for 20 years or so, building these fan fret basses, and suddenly I was like, wow, this is exactly the technology that I need. It's already out there. So one of the first things I did was go to the London Bass Show, I almost said drum show, London Bass Show, and Sheldon was actually there exhibiting, and I talked to him without realizing that he was the creator of these instruments. And he was such a lovely guy, and then I noticed his name tag and it all clicked. But straight away I knew that he was someone I'd love to be involved with. He's got such a great engineering mind, and I like that he's not stuck in the old ways of the past. He's not stuck in the kind of traditional technology that dates back to the 60s. He had the combustion model already, and I was really looking for just a functional touring bass that had this fan fret technology and a great punchy sound. And he already had that, but a little bit later on I got to try one of his Afterburner models, which had 3 pickups in a row, and one of the options was to have the middle and bridge pickups wired together in series, and I loved the sound of that so much. It was kind of reminiscent of like a Stingray sound or something like that, but coupled with the sound of the Dingwall instruments, it was just something else. So when we came around to discussing the potential of having an instrument kind of more focused at the style of music that I play, it just made sense to do something like that. Now, to be honest, I don't really use any sounds other than that series sound with the bridge and middle pickups. So we figured we'd keep it simple. You've still got a few switching options, but essentially this bass has that sound just built into it, ready to go. So this is, other than that, it's quite similar to a combustion, really. A little bit different in terms of the aesthetic, but a slightly different neck feel as well. Yeah, it's just been amazing working with him, and I hope he's enjoyed the relationship as much as I have.